The gangster rap song Pistol Pete by Suggs featuring Trippy the Kid was released 5 years ago. The song eulogizes the former head of a teenage drug-running gang from the Bronx, who is currently serving a sentence of life plus 105 years in a maximum security prison. His name is Peter Rollock, also known as Pistol Pete, and the story of his exploits with his friends is memorialized not just in rap songs, but also in an insightful tome by Jonathan Green in Sex, Money, Murder, a story of crack, blood and betrayal, published by W. Norton Company. It is one of only 2 books I bought from Barnes & Noble store near Bryant Park while visiting New York in the summer of 2018. The other book was Pulitzer Prize-winning Evicted, Profit and Poverty in the American City by Matthew Desmond. You may think, oh God, some 12 to 14-year-olds from a black, impoverished neighborhood in New York City who engage in criminal activity, how can they possibly be relatable to someone sitting in Islamabad or Chennai, Michigan or Mogadishu, Tokyo or Istanbul? But we all have criminal enterprises in our backyards, and they all start from somewhere, usually from downtrodden, poverty-stricken and neglected areas a block away, sometimes next door. Sex, Money, Murder, SMM, was one such gang from one of the poorest neighborhoods of NYC, specifically Soundview, Bronx. A bunch of ragtag boys sold crack around the corner and killed a bunch of rival drug dealers. They were tried and convicted under the federal laws known as RICO, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, that were first created to prosecute and convict mafia members, which are now regularly used for street gangs that consist of 4 to 6 boys. This book shows how a bunch of boys could create havoc and fear in a neighborhood, as well as how they could easily make money quickly by selling crack standing at a street corner. It also shows the life of cops who patrol such streets, and the efforts of law enforcement officials, whether that of detectives or prosecutors, to flip the gang members successfully against one another, to convict fellow members, and clean the streets. But not for long. Though neither the SMM gang nor its members are as notorious or as culturally immortalized as Chicago's South Side, and Pistol Pete Rollock is no Al Capone, despite his love for the golden age of Italian-American mafia, but as you go through the 413 pages of Green's book, an uneasy feeling dawns and sets on you. It is based entirely on extensive interviews done with 2 former gang members and 2 law enforcement officials, as well as transcripts of court cases against SMM. No one else from Soundview spoke to Jonathan Green, not even the pastor from the local church in Soundview. In all the 5 years that it took to research and write this book, his only 2 Soundview interviewees remained, Rollock's former associates Sean Sugar Shaft and Emilio Pipe Romero, both under Federal Witness Protection Program, with new names and new social security numbers, forbidden to ever set foot in Soundview housing projects again. Sean Sugar is introduced to Green by famous detective John O'Malley, and he contacts Pipe Romero through Sean Sugar. Pete Forcelli is the other investigator he talked to. However, no ordinary citizen spoke about life in Soundview before, during, and since SMM was brought down under RICO and Weed and Seed programs. The code of silence lives on. As Jonathan Green himself acknowledges on page 380, quote, "When I started this book, I hoped to interview members of the Soundview community, but most attempts to reach ordinary residents met with defeat. I called those who had been at the weed and seed ceremony. No one returned my calls. I emailed. No one answered. I called the Catholic Church. No one called back. I met with prominent local activists who derided my attempts to write about the neighborhood as poverty porn. Promises of help never materialized. Unquote. For a criminal enterprise that did not even have a formal name for the majority of its existence, what is it about this gang, its name, its leader, and the culture and cycle of endless violence in these neighborhoods that make it impossible for peace, real lasting peace, to permeate these housing projects and make it safe for people? Why are the people still afraid? The book has no answers. Maybe because almost 30 years since SMM was removed from the streets of Soundview, the gang's name is still alive and well in various parts of the country. Maybe because Rollock aligned himself with the United Blood Nations, an East Coast prison gang that united black gangs, and that has probably ensured the continued allegiance and notoriety. Consider this. In November of 2023, long after the events of the book have transpired, Rand Buchanan, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, called Sex Money Murder a national gang, announcing indictment of 23 alleged SMM members for committing fraud, trafficking drugs, and killing people all over East Coast, including Georgia, not only out on the streets but also as inmates behind bars. All of them were charged under RICO.
Permission to first publish 535 Yankee.
And most recently, a courtroom in Fulton County, Georgia, echoed with Young Thug's hip-hop song Slime Shit, while he and his co-defendants sat quietly amongst their lawyers, prosecutors, reporters, and the judge. A rapper and owner of a record label, Jeffrey Lamar Williams, whose rap name is Young Thug, is alleged to be a 5-star general of SMM. He co-wrote the first hip-hop track to win a Grammy for Song of the Year in 2019. It was sung by Childish Gambino. Rap music and hip-hop originated in the Bronx, home of Soundview housing projects and Sex Money Murder. It is an art form created by African Americans and tells stories of their lives in bullet and crime-riddled neighborhoods, their views on police, society, politics, and racism, and less seriously, the party life and how to have a good time. Of course, the lyrics that AllMusic.com once called complex wordplay and lyrical kung fu, as given on Wikipedia, can also be seen as glorifying violence and some street gang. So law enforcement agencies have closely monitored rap songs to fish out evidence of crimes. Irrespective of the 88-page indictment in 2022 against him, plenty of white musicians came out in support of Young Thug. Either ways, the co-founder of his label or gang testified in court during the trial that before being a co-founder of YSL, he himself had been a member of 2 gangs, ROC raised on Cleveland and SMM, Sex Money Murder, even displaying the hand signals that denote SMM, with an amusing expression on his face throughout the testimony. Young Thug's RICO case dragged on for 20 months and is the longest criminal trial in Georgia's history, with moments of high drama and chaos. And what was the drop scene? In October of 2024, a plea deal set Young Thug free immediately on 15 years of probation. I'll just say he had a great attorney working for him in Brian Steele, who lived up to his name in court. So the name and the game nor the music die with the arrest and conviction of Pistol Pete Rollock and his teenage gangster crew. What's more, all of the murders that the OG SMM crew fessed up to, got arrested for and convicted for, were either of rival gang members or criminals associated with the drug business or fellow SMM members that they had a falling out with. All except one, the killing of a man, Tony Morton, who had nothing to do with gangs and was at the wrong place at the wrong time. In SMM, Jonathan Green makes his case. Quote, all New Yorkers know the small one-paragraph mentions of murders that are a regular diet of the daily newspapers. The latest violent death of a young black kid, sometimes an abstraction to readers in Manhattan and elsewhere, may as well be happening in another country. But just north of my Manhattan apartment was a world as dangerous and ruthless as any I had experienced as a journalist reporting in the favelas of Brazil, the garrisons of Kingston, Jamaica, or the killing fields of Colombia. In working on this book, I was surprised to find how many of those daily murders in the newspapers were connected." Unquote. This book also shows you how a lot gets lost in the socio-political game played by liberal and conservative media, where liberal news outlets focus on the killing of black boys and men by police, and conservative outlets focus on black boys killing other black boys in gang culture. It is true, and I'm quoting data from a report published on Giffords Law Center's website in August 2024, that, quote, more than 1 in 4 fatal police shootings involves a black victim. Though black Americans make up just 14% of the US population, police fatally shoot black Americans at 3 times the rate they fatally shoot white Americans. Unquote. So says the report Gun Violence in Black Communities by Alex Nguyen and Kelly Drain, published on 15th August 2024 on Giffords Law Center's website. So there is a very serious problem that the law enforcement protocols need to look at. In fact, one study shows that unarmed black Americans were as likely to be shot as armed white Americans. But it is equally horrifying to realize, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, that more black kids and men are dying at the hands of other black kids and men. Quote, gun violence is the leading cause of death for black children. Children as young as 10, by the way, in large part because of the severe burden of gun homicides on this population. In 2022, black children were more than 18 times more likely to be killed in a gun homicide than white children. In fact, black boys and men not only are the most likely victims of gun violence, but also are exposed to gun violence most often. Unquote. In 2022, more black men ages 15 to 24 died in gun homicides than from unintentional injuries, suicide, heart disease, COVID-19, cancer, non-firearm homicides, diabetes, congenital abnormalities and chronic respiratory diseases, cerebrovascular diseases, anemias, sepsis, influenza, pneumonia, HIV, and police shootings combined. This means that gun violence is the leading cause of death over and above the 15 other leading causes combined. Let that sink in for a second or two. Black men ages 15 to 24 die from gun homicides at a rate more than 21 times that of white residents. This disparity means that while 3 out of every 100,000 young white people die from gun homicides, nearly 7 in every 10,000 young black people are killed in such incidents. In 2022, 1 in every 67 black men ages 18 to 24 in Philadelphia were killed or injured in gun homicides or shootings. In Rochester, New York, it was 1 in 50 young black men. In Cincinnati, it was 1 in 44 young black men. Unquote. And all this gun violence is perpetuated by young black men against other black young men. Quoting the study again, all this leads to mental health problems for the entire communities and adds to the pressure on black women, who have to pick up the pieces and provide care after such violent losses. Plus, it increases poverty and decreases the chance of anyone investing in such a neighborhood. So healthy modes and opportunities of advancement for black kids decrease as well, which makes it more likely that a black boy will join a gang to keep himself or his family safe, or make enough money to get out of the neighborhood for good, or get killed for trying. So this is not a story of angels and demons, but of kids from dysfunctional homes with no good role models and structure, living in dysfunctional and crime-infested neighborhoods, who make bad choices pretty early on and are bearing the consequences of those teenage actions even now. Keep that in mind while reading this book and get a snapshot into the daily lives of the key gang members, but don't look for details on SMM's customers, how they sold the goods, how many people they actually killed, or how much money they actually made and where they hid it. Because the book gives you no information on any of that. It has no maps, not even of Soundview and Randall Avenue, not even of Cozy Corner, which has a pivotal role in this book and also in the lives of this teenage gang. No pictures of any key individuals, not even of those who are currently serving their sentences in prison, and no table of who's who in the chain of command in SMM, to make things clear for the reader. This book takes you inside the daily lives of gang members, their brotherhood, loves, and entanglements, and makes you see why gun violence persists in black communities, and why a murdered gang member is considered a martyr, and why Pistol Pete Rollock and his teenage gang SMM is mythologized in rap songs. They are considered heroes in a system that discriminates against black people. This book will also make you wonder why it's okay for criminals, white criminals, to be glamorized and celebrated in films and TV, and there are countless hit gangster films and endless quotable dialogues right from the days of James Cagney's Top of the World Ma. But black rappers and rap music come under fire every single time a new tune is released. That's some food for thought, tapping your fingers and bumping your head while grooving to any rap song.